Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Star Wars for me has never been about the Skywalker saga. It's not about the rebellion or the Empire. For me, it's about an entire galaxy ready to be explored. For those of you who know me, I love adventure and exploration. My goal in life is to see every country on this planet. I would even love to explore another planet one day, but unfortunately humanity has been spending all of our resources trying to kill each other for the last several thousands of years. But imagine if it wasn't like that. Imagine if we could pool all of our resources together and fly off into the stars and achieve something truly magnificent. We can call the initiative something cool, like Voyage to Acquire and Grow Interstellar Networks and Assets, and help low-tech societies to more efficiently use their planet's resources to serve mankind. Hashtag humanity first.
These dumb bastards ain't getting the message. Alright, let's turn up the heat. Switch incendiaries. Fire.
It's a dream of mine. Well, it's actually not even my dream. I'm just standing on the shoulders of greater men who have come before me. Like Martin Luther King Jr., who also had a dream of human equality, and John F. Kennedy, who was the first US president to dedicate funding to protect Earth from aliens, or Gandalf, who sacrificed so many lesser beings like dwarves, hobbits, talking trees, and elves to make way for the age of man. I'm passionate about humanity, which is why I put it on a t-shirt. Anyway, the Star Wars galaxy is home to billions of stars and even more systems. And my favorite part of any new Star Wars movie, novel, or cartoon is finding out about all the new planets that the creators have made. And these planets come in all shapes and sizes, but sometimes it's hard to quantify just how large or small these worlds are. Which is why today we're going to be bringing back our Real Size series by looking at the real size of Star Wars planets. Now, to start off the series, just for some context, we're going to have to talk about all three Death Stars. And no, I'm not going to call it Starkiller Base because, let's be honest, it wasn't transformative enough to not be called Death Star 3. The first Death Star was one of the largest man-made structures to ever be made, but at 160 kilometers in diameter, it's considered barely even a moon-sized object on a celestial scale. As a matter of fact, most objects in space under 600 kilometers in diameter don't have enough gravitational pull to form a spherical object. Unless it's made out of ice, then it's around 400 kilometers. Still, the Death Star was an impressive construction project, and the millions of Wookiees and Geonosian corpses littered throughout the gaps of the station is a testament of just how many resources it cost the Empire. With a diameter of 160 kilometers, this meant the Death Star is roughly 500 kilometers in circumference. That's roughly the straight line distance between New York City and Niagara Falls. The second Death Star is a bit bigger at 200 kilometers in distance and 628 kilometers in circumference. Driving around the second Death Star would just be 40 miles longer than a trip from Houston to New Orleans. The third Death Star wasn't completely man-made, but built inside the shell of a small ice planet. It had a diameter of 660 kilometers and a circumference of 2,073 kilometers, which is approximately the distance between Los Angeles and Vancouver, which I heard is one of the most beautiful rides in the world, especially on a big old comfortable Harley. Next up is one of the smallest inhabitable worlds in the Star Wars galaxy. Well, barely inhabitable. We're talking about Mustafar, the final resting place of three of Anakin's limbs, his sense of humor, and the outer layer of skin on his face. This planet is 4,200 kilometers in diameter. That's already 700 kilometers wider than our moon. Mustafar has a circumference of around 13,194 kilometers, and because the planet has limited infrastructure and is covered in numerous rivers and oceans of molten lava, I do recommend flying around the planet rather than trying to drive across it. 13,194 kilometers is roughly the distance between New York City and Manila. Unfortunately, there is no route as of now. You have to connect in Japan or China first if you're flying to the Philippines, but Philippine Airlines might start flying this route by the end of October. Either way, it's an amazing country to go and visit. The moon of Endor, resting place of the now extinct terrifying carnivorous species known as the Ewoks. And because, let's be honest, there's no way that species is surviving a giant Death Star crashing into its atmosphere. Just not gonna happen. And we actually did an entire theory video about it, so you can check that out here. Anyway, all the Ewoks are dead, which is also why when you're offered to taste an exotic animal, you should never refuse because you never know when it'll go extinct. Which is the real damage and loss that climate change creates. Hashtag save the environment so we can eat all the animals. The moon of Endor is 4,900 kilometers in diameter, almost the same size as the planet Mercury. The moon of Endor has a circumference of 15,393 kilometers, which is around the same distance between New York City and Singapore. Also currently one of the longest non-stop flights in the world. Singapore Airlines flies this route in 21 hours on their Airbus A380. Next up is the first of many desert planets on this list, and also where the beginning of the end of the Empire started. We're talking about the planet Jakku. At 6,400 kilometers in diameter, Jakku was just a bit smaller than Mars and probably almost as dry. The circumference of Jakku is 20,100 kilometers long. That's roughly the distance of a road trip that circumvents the entire globe, going from London to Magadan in Russia, and then from Alaska to New York City. Which is exactly what Obi-Wan Kenobi did in real life, disguised as actor Ewan McGregor after the events of Phantom Menace.
These aren't the bikes you're looking for. You don't need to see that pass. Move along. Move along. Hello, Strasvitsia.
Big props to the Jedi Master for surviving such an intense trip, and because road trips never seem to go as planned, it didn't take him and his friends 20,100 kilometers to make the trip, but over 30,000 kilometers. They had a lot of detours. Kessel was known for spice and slaves, two of the most lucrative items you could smuggle, if that was your profession. But it's also known as a terrible place to live because the planet wasn't spherical. Which is surprising because the planet was actually quite large enough for the gravitational forces to crush the planet into a sphere. But that didn't happen, and Kessel happens to be quite lumpy, and its diameter ranges from 6,600 kilometers to 8,000 kilometers. That means you might have mountains as high as 1,400 kilometers, which is more than the distance between Chicago to New York City. That's absolutely crazy. I'm sure after a few more thousand years, Kessel will return to a perfect sphere. The icy planet of Hoth. A great place to hide, especially if you're trying to make moves on your sister without the rest of the galaxy knowing. Remember guys, incest is always wrong, even if you don't know she's your sister. Because as we all know, incest babies always go to the dark side. Anyway, Hoth is around 7,200 kilometers in diameter with a circumference of 22,619 kilometers. That's around the same distance as 3 laps around the continental United States, starting off in New York, working your way down to Orlando, and then across to Seattle, and then across to New York City again. Sounds pretty fun the first time around. I don't know if I'd want to do it 3 times in a row though. Next up is one of my favorite places in the galaxy, Scarif. Based on the Maldives in real life, this heavily guarded planet was home to the Imperial Archives and at least 5 Tommy Bahamas, one of which does customized Stormtrooper armor. Scarif is getting close to Earth size at 9,112 kilometers. That's a circumference of 28,626 kilometers. That's just a bit shorter than the distance of a trip from San Francisco to New York City before the Panama Canal was dug. This was a crazy trip. It took 3 to 6 months to complete. Good luck trying to ask your boss for time off and then keeping your job after it. And that's only if you didn't die from a huge storm around Cape Horn or get captured by pirates or drowned by mermaids. The overland passage, however, was even worse and took at least 6 months, and that was from the Missouri River, not even New York City. And as we all know, because we played Oregon Trail, you could die in a lot of horrible ways. The planet of Mandalore, home to one of the coolest cultures in the Star Wars galaxy, was just 100 kilometers more in diameter than Scarif at 9,200 kilometers. It had a really similar orbit to Earth, 366 days in a year. But unfortunately, due to the Mandalorians' love of combat and battle, the surface of the planet was inhospitable and all the cities were built in domes. The Legends version of the planet was a lot better though. You could actually walk around without a hazmat suit. Next up is the jungle planet of Yavin 4, home to lush tropical rainforests and rubble insurgencies. With a diameter of 10,200 kilometers, we're getting really close to Earth size now. But unlike Earth, Yavin 4 is actually a moon and it revolves around the gas giant of Yavin, which is enormous, around 200,000 kilometers in diameter, making it even larger than Jupiter, which is around 142,000 kilometers. Yavin 4 takes around 4,818 days to orbit its star. It has a circumference of around 32,000 kilometers. That's around the distance the average human has walked by their early to mid-20s, depending on how lazy you are. And if you played World of Warcraft, you're going to probably want to subtract 10,000 kilometers for each year that you've played. The original desert planet Tatooine is just 200 kilometers wider in diameter than Yavin 4 at 10,465 kilometers. The standard year lasts 304 days and the surface is made up of 1% water, and the planet has 2 suns. Not really a great place to live unless you like dry areas. Jedha is another extremely arid planet and has a diameter of 11,263 kilometers. This planet is also similar to the size of Earth and has 23-hour days and 403 days a year. Jedha has a 35,383 kilometer circumference. That's roughly the distance a satellite has to travel from sea level into space to achieve a geosynchronous orbit around Earth, or an orbit that matches the speed of Earth's rotation. Geonosis, another dry planet but with the added benefit of radiation, is just another 100 kilometers wider and 11,370 kilometers in diameter. It is a terrible place to live, not only because of the sentient bug species that inhabited it, but because it had 15 moons and a completely unstable asteroid field. After Geonosis, we get to the center of the Star Wars galaxy, the Equinopolis planet of Coruscant. It's actually on the top of my list of places to visit in the Star Wars galaxy. It has a diameter of 12,240 kilometers, which is just 500 kilometers less than Earth, which is why it's not surprising that a day lasts 24 hours and a year lasts 365 days. The only thing different about the planet is that it had 4 moons. But honestly, unless you're living on the top 5 layers of the planet, you're most likely not going to see the sun anyway. You'll probably just be sitting around huffing dust sticks. The paradise of Alderaan draws even closer to our planet at 12,500 kilometers. That's just 231 kilometers less than Earth. If Coruscant was the nerve center of the galaxy, Alderaan would be its heart. It was known for its dramatically beautiful landscapes and rich culture and art, although during the Galactic Civil War, Alderaan shrunk dramatically in size. Kashyyyk is perhaps the closest to Earth in terms of size at around 12,765 kilometers. And just like Earth before all the giants cut down the real trees and left mountain-like stumps all over the planet, Kashyyyk is home to gigantic forests with real trees, not the fake little trees like we have here on our flat Earth. Kashyyyk has a 381-day year and 3 moons. It's relatively sparsely populated with only 55 million Wookiees, but that's roughly the same amount of dogs here on Earth. Kashyyyk has a diameter of around 40,000 kilometers, which is the same length of the rail line that circumnavigates the equator of the Earth after the planet freezes over and the last survivors are all trapped on a nuclear train that constantly is lapping the planet. Last up is one of the largest habitable planets in the Star Wars galaxy. We're talking about Bespin. Now technically you can't really walk on a gas giant or establish a colony on its surface, but you can make a floating city like Lando's Cloud City. At 118,000 kilometers wide in diameter and 370,708 kilometers in circumference, the planet is simply enormous. It would take a Boeing 787 410 consecutive hours at cruising speed to make that journey. The planet itself, however, is rotating quite quickly, but a Bespin year lasts around 5,110 days. Well guys, that is our real size of Star Wars planets. Unfortunately, we couldn't cover every planet because we just don't have that much information. If you like this video, make sure you go to our Generation Films. Well guys, that is our real size of Star Wars planets video. Unfortunately, we couldn't cover every planet because we just don't have all the information out there. If you do like this video, make sure you go check out Generation Films, where we'll be covering the real size of a bunch of different planets from famous movies. Also, don't forget to subscribe to that channel and also this channel so you don't miss out on all of our awesome future content. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.